Good afternoon, everybody. Could I first start by asking you all to go on to mute? We've got one or two sounds, conversations coming through here, which will be disturbing for everyone. So if you could perhaps press the mute button, and that's a lot better. And I'll hand over to Charles Wood to introduce this session.
Right, well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our session on recycling and reuse in technical textiles from the University of Manchester. My name is Charles Wood. I'm the chairman of the Technical Textiles SIG Special Interest Group. And we're delighted that you've joined us this afternoon. We've got a wonderful set of panelists Mark will introduce in a moment. For technical textiles, we have such a wide range of applications, so the possibilities to recycle and reuse materials are very substantial, right across everything from civil engineering, geotextiles, it's barely a civil engineering project which doesn't need some form of textiles, to composite materials. Anyway, we've got a great panel for you today, and I'd like to hand over to Mark Jarvis. Mark.
Charles, thank you very much, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you, wherever you are in the world. You're very welcome. As Charles said, we're at the University of Manchester. The sun is shining, it's warm outside, and we're set for a very interesting session this afternoon. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Mark Jarvis of World Textile Information Network. If you don't know us, you can find out more about it at tin.com. So we have a large group of panelists this afternoon. Starting to my left, we have Jen Hill of Longworth. Adrian Wilson we'll hear more from in a moment. Then we have Adnan Z. Khan from Carpet Recycling. Mark Hitchmuth from Mark 2. Mark Hitchman. I do apologise. I should have checked that before. From Gem to Carbon, and then virtually we have Ross Barry from LMB, and all the way from I think it's the west coast of Canada, we have Dave Casca. We'll be hearing from each of those panelists in a few moments, but to kick us off, an old colleague of mine and someone who is really an expert on all aspects of technical textiles, nonwovens, and the composites industry. And I know Adrian has very kindly prepared a short presentation for his 5-minute introduction, giving us an overview of recycling in technical textiles. So over to you.
I'd just like to spend 5 minutes before giving a broad overview of where we are with use in the technical textile sector. A kind of big picture thing. So as I was saying, annual production of all fibre types, both natural and synthetic, is currently around 92 million tonnes. Of this production, less than 1% is recycled back to new fibres in any kind of circular system of business. Now, forecasts indicate that another 45 million tonnes of fibres will be required to meet rising demand by 2030. Only around 5 million tonnes of this is scheduled to come from cellulosics and other natural fibres. The remainder is going to be synthetics and largely PET polyester with new capacity from China and Asia. So the availability of recycled PET for the production of synthetic fibres comes mainly from the conversion of converted waste bottles. This supply line is likely to tighten considerably in the coming years, result in new bottle-to-bottle recycling ventures. They're entirely circular, not like the conversion of PET bottles into new fibres for use in, say, garments, which are then going to be disposed of anyway. Things are going to change. Fibres in the future are poised to be viewed as more valuable resources, that's for sure. As part of the European Union's strategy for sustainable and circular textiles, for example, the separate collection of waste, textile waste, will be mandatory for all EU member states in January 2025. There's also a producer responsibility scheme for dealing with the waste produced. How this will be achieved is still being debated. There are ambitious plans on the drawing board, but very much on the drawing board. One is the Rehubs initiative, which is being initiated by Eurotex from Brussels. It's calling for between 150 to 250 dedicated new recycling centres to be established in the next few years, each with capacities of between 50 to 100,000. This is large scale sorting and processing infrastructure. What this is aiming for is the fibre to fibre recycling between 18 to 26% of Europe's textile waste by 2030. Success is obviously not guaranteed at this stage. To reach critical scale, real collaboration and transition funding is required, along with investments that come sector push. Now, current recycling infrastructure in place is largely from mechanical and the waste, either into non-wovens or into regenerated yarns for spinning. Both options give the waste the same life, but cannot in many instances be considered truly circular option. One exception, if you can turn the slide again, is what's happening in Scandinavia right now. There are things like Renew sells 60,000 ton annual capacity circulose plant in Sweden, which was successfully commissioned in August 2022. Circulose is a renewable dissolving pulp that's made from cotton-rich textile waste and can be turned into new viscose fibres, for example. There are other initiatives which you can read through here from Infinited Fibre Company and a second Finnish company, Spinover. These are all bringing big capacities. That I should also mention, this is strictly for cellulosic-based materials. So we're in no way getting to the synthetics, the polymer-derived materials in any of these initiatives at the moment. So a key barrier in the recycling of post-consumer textiles is in the blended nature of much of this waste, and especially the extensive use of elastins. For this reason, it makes sense for recycling operations to have pure supply streams where possible. There's already an economic case for recycling of specific high-value fibres, as we're going to hear from our panel, like aramids from protective clothing and workwear fabrics, and nylon from tyres and floor coverings. Recycled carbon fibres from composites also have significant expansion potential, and we have experts in this area too. As I said, panelists involved in all of these fields are with us this afternoon, and that's just my brief overview. I'm sorry about the interference on the line, but I hope it all went well. I'll hand back to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian. Well done. So I'd like now to bring in another one of our panelists who's actually got up especially early for us this morning, Dave Casper, over in Vancouver. Dave is in charge of General Recycled, which focuses on closed loop recycling of meta and para aramid textiles. And Dave is a textile man and boy, so I'm sure he has some interesting insights for us. Dave, the floor is yours for about 5 minutes.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I can talk about recycling aramids forever, so flag me down when you need me to stop. No problem there. Yeah. So General Recycled was created in 2012 with the express purpose of recycling both meta and para aramid textile. For the techies in the room, you probably know what that is. For the layman, aramids are used extensively in the industrial workwear marketplace. There are two types, meta and para aramid. Slight different link in their molecular chain, and they're used for a number of reasons, but one, primarily they are a very, very strong fiber, 5 or 6 times pound for pound stronger than steel. Two, they are inherently flame resistant. Note the terminology, it's not fire retardant, it is flame resistant. And as a side note, it is we're not allowed to produce fire retardant fabrics in Canada due to the effluent not meeting Canadian environmental standards. That's a whole other panel that I'm sure we could talk about. And last but not least, with aramids, they are 100% non-biodegradable. nor should they be incinerated, as the structure of aramids is the aromatic benzene ring. I'm not a chemist. I don't know a lot about benzene. I just know it's not good for you. So what do they do with this stuff? They put it into landfill. And this was a fiber created by DuPont in the early 1960s. And every inch of it since that time is in exactly the same condition today as the day it went into landfill. So what do we do with this stuff? So it's used extensively in industry far and wide. I'm sure all of you, whether you drove today or took the bus or the train or flew recently, you have all been exposed to aramids today. You just don't know it's there. So we created a process, a closed loop process. So we work with end users in industries far and wide. Oil and gas is the easy target to take back their garments at the end of their useful life cycle. And we work with their complete value chain because we want fabric scraps from their garment manufacturer as well. When we take the garments in, we triage them to remove the zippers and the snaps. And because we're living within the world of standards here, flash fire, electrical arc flash standards would be the two key ones. The metals on there are brass, and we can easily recycle the brass. Everything else on the garment gets shredded back into fiber. So we purposefully built a para-aramid recycling facility in Quebec. For those of you who don't know, para-aramids eats machinery. So if you don't have a facility, a conventional textile recycler would not be able to handle para-aramids. They would grind down any of their shredding drums or carding systems to nothing in no time. So it has to be express built, which we did. And if you can handle para-aramids, you can handle everything else. And that's ultimately part of the conversation we have to put the product back into fiber, and we work at that point. Some decisions can be made into how we spin yarn. We blend it with virgin fibers, and we can spin a number of different yarn counts, and then work within the value chain to bring the recycled yarn to a weaver or a knitter, or through our own value chain, we could weave or knit product, bringing the recycled fabric back to the end user's garment manufacturer, who simply continues to make garments for the end user. Everything we put in the marketplace can be recycled repeatedly. So everything we produce, we want back, and the cycle continues. We live in the world of standards, as I mentioned. So everything we produce is third-party, independently certified for at a minimum the flash fire, electrical arc flash and flash fire standards. And that's the ace in the hole. There's a lot of concerns around the word recycled. Is it inferior? Is it different? There's no question this requires a paradigm shift in some of the thinking around their protective clothing program. But the third-party independent certification would indicate that we meet those standards with flying colors, and in many instances better than the virgin products in the marketplace. It's a sustainable, closed-loop, cost-effective program. And we are patented on product and patented on process. And I could go on forever. We're happy to be here talking to you today.
Dave, thank you very much. And you stuck exactly to the 5 minutes. So next up, we have Mark from Genta Carbon, your managing director there, as I understand it, Mark. UK business focused on the delivery of next generation carbon fiber recovery systems and the expansion of recycled non-woven technologies. Mark, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mark. And yeah, thanks for everybody for taking the time to listen to us. Genta Carbon, I mean, the biggest guys is ELG Carbon Fibre, came about to tackle that issue of recycling an expensive textile material, as in a carbon fibre material. And it was interesting to hear Adrian's figures in terms of the growth of waste in textiles, because although starting from a different ground point, the actual proportional increase is the same in the carbon fibre industry as it seems to be in the general industry. So we're talking about 60,000 tonnes of waste in 2020, probably 120,000 tonnes of waste by 2030. By the time we get to 2040, we're into 240,000 tonnes of waste. So that's sort of the growth within the carbon fibre industry that is being driven by by green technology, by carbon neutral or carbon prevention technology. The manufacture of wind turbines, the manufacture of hydrogen cylinders, automotive and aerospace projects where lightweight materials are required. So there's a need for the use of carbon fibre. What we're obviously looking to do is tackle that waste stream. The waste stream in 2020, we probably recycled about 1,000 tonnes as an industry, not as Gen2 Carbon, as an industry, about 1,000 tonnes in 2020 of the 60,000 tonnes that is out there. So it's not a small challenge. Our methodology is a pyrolysis method, so we remove resins and other impurities through a pyrolysis of them. We've moved to a second generation of that technology where we recycle the energy that is produced from those off gases to power the process. So that is developing from the technology that we were probably using 10 years ago. Adrian pointed out the expansion potential, and the big word there for us is potential. We've got to get industry to understand the value of the recycled material against the value of the virgin carbon fibre material, because there's lots of it out there, and if enough people want to use recycled carbon fibre, we can produce it for you. Our current output's around 200 tonnes. We expect to grow that to 1,000 tonnes over the next 3 to 4 years, but we need customers. We need people who are prepared to take that step and say, right, yes, we will use carbon fibre from a recycled source rather than from a virgin source. We're looking at circular with some of the aerospace companies. That's the vision where we bring it back into those markets. All for now. I don't want to steal my own thunder for later if there are any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. And just prompted by that, if you do have any questions for the panel, then can you put them into the chat in the webinar, please? And we'll do our very best after these introductions to answer those for you. Thank you. Okay, next up we have Adnan Zeb Khan from Carpet Recycling UK. Adnan has a wealth of experience in waste management, working in the public, private and community sectors for over 20 years. Wow, you don't look old enough, Adnan. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this opportunity to be here and to perhaps kind of introduce Carpet Recycling UK. So I've been, I've been in the waste management sector now for 20 plus years, 22 years, I think it is. But I've been the manager for Carpet Recycling UK for around 5. Carpet Recycling UK, regardless of its name, it's not a recycling company. We are a trade organisation representing the carpet and textile flooring sector here in the UK. It was set up in 2007 to kind of help manufacturers deal with waste, reduce waste, deal with waste, and recycle as much as possible. Since 2007, we are, as of January, actually, just gone last month, we are now representing 80% of the carpet and textile flooring sector here in the UK. So our memberships include manufacturers, distributors, raw material suppliers, retailers, contractors, reuse companies, recycling companies, technology companies. So our representation is the whole of the supply chain. And that makes us unique because we are able to provide opportunities, solutions, identify where we can find material, waste material, where we can find kind of recycling possibilities. But essentially, we are dealing with a product that was never designed to be recycled in the first place. The product carpet and carpet tiles is a composite product made of different layers, latex, bitumen, different kinds of backings. And unfortunately, It's made to last, essentially. It's made to last 10, 15 plus years. In some cases, there's still properties out there 20, 30, 40 years that have still got the same carpet. So it was never kind of meant to be a throwaway product. And as such, it's a strong composite product that is difficult to take apart at the end of its life. What we are trying to do now, and we are working with the supply chain and manufacturers, and it's very interesting to talk about plastic bottles because we've got examples of carpets being made out of plastic bottles now. So the manufacturers are really now thinking outside the box. They're making products that are single polymer products, so through all the way from its fiber down to its middle to its backings and everything like that. They are single polymer products. And there's some real key developments and advancements that are going on in the sector. So today we are here to try and kind of learn from each other, to kind of explain what we can do and how we are doing things currently with carpet waste, how we can take it up. And just to give you a kind of scale, in 2021, we estimated 467,000 tonnes of carpet and textile flooring waste in the UK alone. So that's the scale of the problem. Most of this material is going to energy from waste, landfill also, probably 60,000-70,000 tonnes is being recycled. So we've got a big journey ahead of us, and we're here to learn from each other and see what we can do to kind of increase those reuse and recycling percentages. Thank you.
Thank you, Adnan. Can I just check? 467,000 tonnes a year?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. Next up, we have Ross Barry of LMB. Ross has extensive expertise in the post-consumer textile supply chain, including experience in innovating new collection methods. Ross, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'm pleased you did mention that I've got experience in collection of post-consumer. I've got no technical background on recycling, but having been in the industry 30 years, I kind of know a little bit. So I seem to know a lot about everything and very little about nothing. So yes, I represent LMB. We are a traditional textile merchant, I think is what you'd call us. So we have textile banks in and around London, which we operate with local authorities and charities. We've set up a sister company a couple of years ago called Reskin Clothing, whereby we work with brands to offer a take-back solution for the clothes that they have sold. This is obviously a very new business model, and one that I'd have to say the fashion industry are becoming very interested in with the looming EPR. So a few years back, most fashion retailers didn't really care what happened to their clothing. A few did, and obviously got the likes of Patagonia, but most people were very much of the view we'll make it as cheap as we can, sell it and send it back out there. Clearly the public aren't going to stand for this too much longer. So yeah, we're hoping to sort of pioneer new collection methods. I think the scale, so we're very much from the end of, hundreds of thousands of tons created every year. How to deal with that. In the UK alone, I think there's still something like 300,000 tons of clothes that go to landfill. So if you're looking at resources, huge area there. So we collect it, we grade it, we try to find the best possible home for it. Traditionally, that has always been reuse and rewear. Often people discard clothing because it's not good enough for them, or they've perhaps thought, I can give it to a friend, I will put it on eBay, but don't consider, people in other countries do actually rewear the clothing. Report came out the other week, it's 70 times better to extend the life of clothing rather than create new. I'm sure a lot of you have seen in the press, there's been a lot of reports on, piles of clothing in Ghana specifically, also in Chile. The problem that you seem to have, or we do have, is yes, people in those countries do need clothing. It gets used. The problem is, what do you do with it at the end? You're still in a linear system. So just moving your trouble elsewhere doesn't really solve the problem. The logical thing to do is set up the collection methods for those countries that actually have the clothing at end of life. But again, that's a sort of completely new subject that we've gone for hours about. Our idea is to perhaps try and extend the rewear of clothing in this country as much as we can, follow the proximity principle of waste, deal with it as close as you can. So through Reskinned, we will take the clothing from brands and customers. From a customer's viewpoint, it's really good because they have clothing they no longer want. They simply go online, register that they want to send it back to us. And as soon as we get it back, we register what we've got. We don't care if it's worn out or if it's brand new, but the customer will get a voucher from the brand, which is great because, you know, the brand gets engagement with them. They obviously get a new purchase, and they also know that there's a complete transparency that we will handle it correctly. So you'll find we've got an online store where we will resell the clothing. We also repair the clothing. So if you look at someone like Finisterre, who's one of our, well, an early adopter, they're an outwear company, and, you know, the level of clothing that's been resold there and the repairs is, you know, really good. We will then, if it's not suitable for reuse, look at how we can recycle it. And this is, you know, where things are getting exciting. I mentioned earlier, you know, the Scandinavians are running ahead with this. Most cottons can be recycled. The question is getting it away from that horrible polyester and polycotton mixes, but there's significant investment into that. So we supply Renewcell. We're speaking to most of the other Scandinavian guys about, you know, what their material content requirements are, how we can get it to them, how we can sort it. The problem is that technology is lagging behind on the sorting. So, you know, it's still by hand. We've got little scanners that will tell you what the material content is, but it's not the quickest process. So, you know, there's advances coming on there, which I'm happy to talk about, and also EPR. So, yeah, any questions on that side of things, feel free to ask later.
Ross, thank you. Thank you very much. And final panelist is Jen Hill from Longworth, an innovation tech company who reclaim from various value waste streams, but increasingly are applying their technology to textiles and plasticized fabrics. Jen.
Thank you. Yeah, we're more focused, I guess, on the technology used to actually process and recover some of these materials. We're not a recycler. We are developing technologies for recyclers. We passionately believe that we need to stop thinking about waste streams in terms of the use that previous life had, whether it be carpets or garments or a carbon fibre panel for a car. It's still all materials. And if we bring it down to a material level and look at volumes on a global scale, we believe that that's the only way that we'll achieve true 100% circular reusability time and time again. Our focus at the moment, our history is in pyrolysis. Our focus at the moment is in a new technology, affectionately being called pressolysis. It's emission free, it's using pressure. We've just had the first stage of a new British standard accepted for it. So you guys out there will all have heard about chemical recycling, hydrolysis, solvolysis. You'll have heard of pyrolysis, no doubt. This is none of those. And it's for 20 years been developed and trialled and relatively established in some industries, but not in this waste reclamation industry. Pressolysis effectively works with the organic content in waste. So in our terms, we don't use the word waste. We can, for instance, recover a carbon fibre component, but 100% of the resin comes back as well and can be reused as a resin. With other fabrics and textiles, such as carpets, we're looking at the separation of mixed fabrics. So if you've got a carpet structure with a polyprop, PET backing, a latex SBR layer in there, we want all three back. We don't want to sacrifice one to reclaim another. So we're constantly working at the moment on separating those polymers to the highest usability, reusability levels possible. Examples of that are, we look at carpets across, I think it's really easy for everybody online to then, and Adnan will know this, everybody online uses the word carpets and you think about a carpet in your office or your home. Carpets that we're looking at are in aeroplanes. They are in shopping malls, they're in hotels, they're in cars. Every car that we all drive has carpet in it. It's all just plastic at the end of the day. It's all of it is materials. And if we think about it in terms of the materials that it's made of, rather than the fact that it's been used as carpet, we suddenly start to get to this zenith of, yes, you can use a plastic bottle to make a carpet, you can then use that same carpet to make a garment, you can then use the garment to make something else. That's where we need to get to in terms of recycling, rather than this quite closed view of garment to garment, carpet to carpet, car cockpit to car cockpit. It just isn't going to work, and we're thinking far too small scale, as we probably always do here in the UK. I think if we gather the fact that none of these materials are actually manufactured from raw here in the UK, why do we think we're going to find a solution here in the UK? We have to look outside. We have to speak to the other countries, the other world regions, the other industries worldwide to find these solutions. With a different hat that I wear is the board director of Composites UK, and through that we're working much more closely now with the ACNA in America, with UCA on mainland Europe. We're starting to make links with the other associations of the countries where these materials are actually produced. They come out of the ground in those countries, so they know the stats better than we do. They know that we could displace a huge amount of those materials if needed by using materials again and again and again. The differentiators with the technology that we're talking about are that it's being applied across all of these materials, across a number of different industries. It's been applied to removing polymers from high-grade manufacturing equipment. It's been applied to textile garments, technical textiles in terms of, as Dave touched on, flame resistant fabrics, firefighter uniforms, for instance, aramid, as Dave also touched on, carbon fibre, wind blade waste from, which is GRP. All of these different levels basically are all still plastics. The thing that's non-recyclable or deemed non-recyclable is an element of plastic. And if we can find a way to create a way to separate that from the elements that we want to save, then we've nailed it. We've nailed recycling, because we don't use the word recycling anymore. It's just materials, and it's a material that you can't use anymore, so you convert it into a format that you can use. To make that possible, I think we need the elements that we've probably got in this Zoom room today. You need people like Ross collecting it, understanding it, sorting it, separating it. You need technologies, ideally like mine or Dave's, to actually reclaim those materials and make them back into, polymer pellets or chips or whatever it might be. You need people like Mark at Gen2 Carbon to then make that into a new something or other. And most of all, we need industry, and I'm talking OEMs who pass this down in the supply chain constantly and say, oh, can't the demand for recycled material just isn't there. That's rubbish. We know the consumer demand is there. We know people will pay 5 more for a t-shirt if it's recycled. We know they'll pay 4 times more for a 4-door saloon if it's got a Tesla label on it. So the consumer demand is indeed there. There's a whole generation of teenagers coming through at the minute who will demand this content. They will demand that they know that their consumer goods are not using raw materials and drilling for oil. And we are passionate about finding solutions to that and basically taking what we now know as waste. And to put it into context, we've got a recycled nappies project, which your average nappy is 8 different polymeric layers. We want all 8 back. And at the moment, it's looking possible. Thank you.
Thank you. What a picture to finish on, recycling. Really? No. 1.5 billion nappies a day. Yeah. So right, okay. Currently going into landfill. Right, okay. Yeah. Plus 460,000 tons of carbon. Yes. Okay. So can I just repeat, if you do want to ask any of the panelists, or indeed all of the panelists, a question, please use the chat function in the meeting and they'll get passed across to me, and we'll get some answers to your questions. But just to kick things off, we're next door here in this building to the Graphene Institute. So, carbon. It's hugely expensive, it's energy intensive, and I understand about 40% of it is wasted in manufacturing operations even to start with. So what's in place at the moment for reusing it? We've heard one or two examples. Adrian, perhaps I can start with you.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm not an expert in this field, but as I understand it, it's a question of infrastructure as are the rest of these issues. There are take-back schemes being in place, which obviously with the figures that have been provided need to escalate an awful lot. Perhaps others are better placed to say a little more about specific for carbon.
I mean, take-back schemes in the carpet sector, there's only one that I know of.
Oh,
yeah. And they generally tend to be the manufacturer-led. Okay, there isn't one that everybody uses.
right.
And that's something that we have to develop, because we've got EPR coming down the line. You know, just as well, and just the same with any other industry, say, in textiles and whatever else they may be coming down the line. So we've got to start looking at that. We've got to get better with our data. 467,000 tons. I've spoken this about 1 million times, so to me it doesn't sound like very much anymore. Yeah, but I appreciate that to somebody the first time they're hearing it, it's colossal. But we're probably missing out on a whole chunk of this as well. That's getting lost in the very complicated waste management world. You know, what happens to it in a skip? Where does it go from there, and where does it end up? Who knows? So you know, we've got to do more. But at the moment, you know, people are reluctant to pay for it, because recycling is great and it needs to happen, but you know, there is a cost associated to it. So I think very quietly, our sector may be waiting for legislation to happen, EPR to happen. You know, we've estimated very loosely, but you know, just for the carpet sector alone, if EPR was to come into place, it cost around about £65 million per annum to the carpet sector. You know, that's just not a lot. That's not a lot. No. Well, you know, probably another 20, 30, 40 million pounds that will get added on to that in terms of additional costs and stuff like that. But you know, they're waiting for that pot of money perhaps to start developing these take-back schemes, to start developing these technologies, to start developing things. So you know, we've got a long way to go, but there is, you know, obviously stuff like what Jen's doing. Jen, you know, I'm desperately waiting for something to kind of happen, because I know Jen's doing some fantastic trials for us, some of our members, but we're just waiting for all that to happen. But you know, we've got a huge tonnage here, and we need more technologies to come on board.
You mentioned legislation, and it seems to me that we're kind of in a position where if we had legislation that made everyone do it, it would happen. Yes. So what are we hearing about what's down the tracks? I mean, I hear that the European Union are looking at introducing legislation around recycling of textiles. But what are we collecting, you know?
From the OEMs, there is, and I think you just referred to it, and there's and it was referred to at the end of the agenda, there is much more of a pull from the consumer to buy stuff that's got a green profile. And in the end, the OEMs listen, and in the end, they tell the tier ones, and the tier ones then start to look for alternative materials. And that's the virtuous circle that we're trying to move into. The current situation for us, if you look at the inquiries that have come in by emails to the website, by whatever means, in the average week, we get between 5 and 15 inquiries asking us, can we recycle our waste carbon fibre. In that same period, we might get one, maybe two, asking, can we look at some of your recycled material and see if we can use it? Now, that imbalance prevents the growth in for carbon, is what is preventing the growth in that carbon industry. As I say, we globally about 1,000 tons were recycled in 2020 out of 60,000 available. That volume is going to double in availability. But where's the incentive to double or actually get even close to recycling that volume? If all you're actually doing is taking the volume from the manufacturer, processing it, and then sitting on it because nobody's taking it out of the other. So recycling or reuse. Jen said a really lovely thing there, which just because you're recycling a car doesn't mean you need to make another car. And this drives a bit frantic because you get a material from aerospace and say, yeah, but we can't use it in aerospace. And you say, well, nobody's really asking you to. This is a highly technical material, a lot of good properties. Why aren't we looking at some of the other properties? And this works as a gas diffusion layer or an electrode battery. You could even argue upcycling that from being part of a plane wing. If we can get this message across and people can start to pick up on this, then the equation for Jen or other recycling companies shifts the other way, and we start to think, oh, hang on, we're running out of waste to make the new product. At the moment, we're stockpiling waste because we can't shift it out the other end because we can't pour in enough. And legislation will help us do that to finally answer your question, Mark.
Well, with regards to extended producer responsibility, over the next couple of years, we're going to see it for textiles, fishing nets, car tires, and end-of-life vehicles. I think is already there. But EPR already exists for our electronics. We just are so used to it now, we don't notice it. When you take your fridge back to a kind of, or when you purchase a new fridge or something like that from, in the UK currency somewhere, they ask you to take your old one back, and there's a £20 charge. That charge is then kind of split amongst all the different recyclers and companies and stuff like that are involved in that EPR. So EPR already exists. It will start coming into play because government no longer wants to pick up the cost for all these different materials out there. The duty of care has to stay with the manufacturer, and it has to follow all the way through.
Dave, what's the situation stateside? Is there legislation in the pipeline?
Canada has a template for EPR going back to 2009. Created a final white paper in 2014, and it is yet to be implemented. The comments about electronics, spot on. We do it day in, day out without even thinking about it. I'm not sure how they move that forward, quite frankly. I think, again, I can only speak from the Aramid perspective here, but I think the push has to come from the top down. We've come full circle. When we started this process, for example, we were calling on fabric manufacturers, and there was interest. Of course, this is something new in the product in the pipeline that they could bring to the market. But education is such a key component to what we do. It really needs to come from the top down onto their own value chain. That's how I see things. I think listen, every step of our process, everybody said no, this will never work. So there was interest, but it was limited interest until you can get to the right people at the oil and gas companies, for example, and to recognize that they have a disposal problem and that there's costs associated with disposal. It goes hand in hand with the cost of building a recycled product. Everyone wants to recycle until they find out it costs them money. And I said that yesterday when we were talking. So key component to us is to be talking to the right people at the end users. It's never supply chain. No disrespect to anybody working in supply chain there. They just don't equate the same problems together. Get the waste management people in the room, you'll identify the costs right away. Those costs get then built into the shredding, fiber, yarn, fabric, etc. And you bring back a product that in the aramid world, it's not a race to the bottom because even generic aramids are expensive, but there's no reason for it to be more expensive than what they're purchasing now. And of course, we're offering a closed loop system. So you're eliminating the problems associated with disposal. So EPR legislation, you know, it's all good talk. I can appreciate that. I found governments to be useless, quite frankly, and we've talked to them all right across Canada. There are some good things happening in Quebec, but the kicker is that they're some of the biggest users of armament product out there. Think of military, think of policing, you know, wildland forest fighting, things like that. Those are all spec armaments, and government uses them routinely and disposes them in landfill with impunity. So it's tricky.
Electronics has happened and textiles hasn't. I mean, is it purely down to the legislation?
Yes,
Right.
yes.
Well, that's the growth in usage, I guess, as the fast fashion movement came along with it.
growth in
That's what I
usage.
said, so.
Yeah, and it's also the cost of disposal and the damaging effects of the components in electronics.
Yeah.
That's also kind of like the environmental disaster that's caused. Essentially.
It's shortages.
Yeah.
So the supply shortages, and that's something that in carbon fibre we're going to see in probably within 5 years. And the global capacity of manufacturing carbon fibre is probably 150,000 tons, 150,000 tons a year of virgin carbon fibre capacity. That doesn't cover the uses that people are quoting for it in terms of hydrogen cylinders, wind power, other sort of aerospace type applications. If you plot the demand curve against the production curve, by 2027, 2028, there's not enough virgin carbon fibre available. So that's got to be a driver for using the recycled material.
Yeah.
Because there's maybe lots of it. Technically, pardon that.
Well, the argument is, Mike, that it will happen then.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
demand will be happening. It won't happen until then.
Yeah, I know. That's what we, I mean, you must be the same. We're trying to grow a business to be ready for that. And it's hard to, you can't go from, as we do now, recycling 200 tons of material to recycling 2,000 tons of material in the 2-week switch. You know, we've got to start building now. So we need that support from the OEMs, from the tier ones, to help us be ready for that. We need the vision within those groups to help us grow to match the demand, so that when they go, oh, hang on, where's all the material gone? That we've got a chance of doing something about it. And in the UK, I mean, ideally, not xenophobic, but we've got the technology in the UK, along with, we've got the technology that's Cosley, Gen 2 carbon, but where the money's being invested is in China. And, you know, it's against it, but we're missing out.
And then, of course, all that material has to be shipped.
Of course.
China to here for use. Yeah, the logic is
wrong.
Of course it is. Of course it is. Okay. Well, we're talking.
Sorry to interrupt. We've got a question related to EPR here, which is, will the UK EPR be similar to the French system? Just asking, obviously, once we're just on that.
Anyone know?
The French system, yes and no. The French, I think the French have got around about 30 EPRs already in place, so they're way ahead of us with regards to EPR. They've recently put one out regarding carpets, and they've got commercial carpets, so the carpet tiles in offices with construction waste, and they've got a separate one for domestic carpets. Don't quite agree with that. There's a lot of problems with their how they're going to distribute the money once it's coming out. So it may be, but I don't really want it to be, if that's the answer. Because I think carpets in its own right should be on its own and not necessarily mixed with other materials, because it's a big enough problem. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but
Is EPR actually on the table in the UK? No, it's a European thing, but is it actually separately being developed?
because of our shaky government, yeah, and people kind of in and out of post and like a rolling door, it's been delayed, and COVID hasn't helped, and so on and so forth. But in 2018, the waste prevention program came out, putting carpets with bulky household waste. So it's not just this pretty much everything you see in this room,
Right.
everything you see in your bedroom. So there's a big plan. What we're trying to do as a sector and as an industry is to turn around and say, well, voluntarily, this is what we've been doing already. So don't kind of don't tarnish us with the same brush as everything else. We actually have a route map, and going forward, we know what we want to do, just work with us.
I think that's the risk that we're at is EPR, certainly the French system comes at it from, again, not on materials point of view, it comes at it from a usage. So there'll be a different EPR for carpet than there will for garments. We commissioned a report recently from Mineral Waste Consultancy, who found that there's a pattern so far in government that it's looking like garments EPR will go, and fast fashion will follow the French and Greek models to a degree. But again, that is setting us off on that trail where Adnan's industry has to conform to completely different rules for marks than fashion garments, and they're all using the same fibers.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous, and it's going to make it less and less easy for us to say, you know what, your old carbon fiber, if it's such bad quality that you can't make a play with it anymore, let's make a carpet with it. And then when it's in a carpet, let's make it some better. And we can't do that if we have all these different. So Adnan's hits it on the head that we need to get in front of that and show government what EPR needs to look like. Yes, we want legislation, but if we just say that and they come up with something appalling, we won't have a leg to stand on. So as industry, we need to put together and across all these sectors as well to say, you know what, it's textiles, full stop. And this is how we'll commit to dealing with it. But that means you do need that pull from the brands and the manufacturers right at the top of the budget to say, withstand this. It'll actually come back round if you think about it. If they suddenly become a UK materials producer, raw materials, which is what recycled material is, we don't need to import anything anymore. The costs plummet. And they can sell things for higher prices because it's a British made product. It's never set foot out of these shores. So it would come back round, but somebody has to fund it happening in the short term, which can only be the brands and the consumer, sadly, which is why it's not happening.
Is that with a danger though, Jen? This idea of making one material into something else, isn't this a bit contrary to the idea of circularity, you know, in that we're creating a further waste stream or a further stream of something that needs to be turned into something else along the way there?
Well, I think the key comes from creating some, for me, the legislation needs to be that recycled materials have to be recyclable themselves in turn. Ideally upcycled, everything we do is looking at upcycling. So we're taking wind blade waste and making it worth the same as carbon fibre. We're taking hydrogen tanks type 4 and making them into a type 5. We're all the time thinking, but the next life cycle, if it's had a 30-year life cycle as an aeroplane wing, but the next life cycle will be 100 years as something else. Because then you're not actually picking it down the road. You're saying that material came out of the ground with potentially a 5-day life cycle if it's going to end up on the country room floor. And instead, it's had 130 years.
Yeah.
Because of the materials that it was made out of. Because we're viewing things as what they were supposed to be instead of failed, what they were supposed to be, rather than, do you know what, it's still free of charge, really good quality advanced material. And it's perfect for X.
Yeah.
So Mark's way might be
Certainly to certain degree, a tiny circle going round and round.
Of course.
It could be a pretty massive circle.
There's maybe a bit of a distinction then between when we're talking about high performance materials like you have and things to adult fast fashion commodity textiles, you know, where everything is about that key.
I think the key is still to come back to the material though. If you've got a dress that was sold for a fibre, which in every ethical sense is wrong, but it's made of polyester, which somebody wears once and puts in the bin, that's still practically virgin polyester. It's not contaminated particularly, it's been worn once. So what else should you make with that polyester?
Yes. Yeah.
Jen, I think you were spot on there, and it was a great question. And the word circularity can mean whatever it wants to mean. The word I hate at the moment, and I think you mentioned it at the beginning, Becky, is downsizing. Yeah, I think that's actually quite disrespectful. yeah, to the big investment, the massive effort, the years of hard work that each sector has gone through to then call it downcycling. Carpet, you know, we're a long, long way away before carpet can be made back into carpet. Okay, so let's try and make another flooring product or some kind related or even not related. I'm quite happy to make a laptop case or a chair or something like that, a bench, that gives it another 10, 15, 20 years, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's another life. And then that will follow another process, that will follow another process. But, you know, we are way away from circularity, and it's true. For
At that point, I was in a event in Arkham several months ago, and the question that I was asked was, what loss of strength of fibre that happens in the recycling process? Who cares?
Yeah.
I mean, because we're not trying to make it back into what it was. We're trying to make it into something different. And if your start point is this is less than what it was, then it's downside, but you straight away on the back foot, you're defending something.
Yeah.
When really it should be to look, you can afford this as virgin carbon fibre. So if you want to make something really nice out of carbon fibre, use the recycled stuff. It's really good.
Yeah.
Not,
Well, we've
it's not
also
as good as
mentioned,
virgin, so.
We've also got industry partners in some, not just with fibre, but in general, saying we don't even want to buy virgin material, we just don't have a choice. We don't want to pay £35 a kilo for a golf club. But that's what we make, and it has to be out of carbon fibre, and there's no option. And we would heartily buy a recycled version if it was consistent and ticked all the boxes and characterised. And that's where we're sticking at the moment. There's not enough R&D into usability and adding that material to the non-materials database so that people can specify it. People designing cars can say, that's what it would cost making it out of virgin, that's what it would cost making it out of all windlass. Let's make it out of an old windlass. Everybody's going to say that eventually, aren't they? Then all the virgin fibre can go where it's needed, where it has to be virgin. Because most applications that we see, Mark will know better than me, do not need to be virgin carbon fibre straight up to school.
We get those comments all the time about the minute they see the word recycle, it's quite panic, but there's some apprehension for sure. The saving grace in the industrial workwear marketplace is that third-party independent certification. So we're sending product out, garments are being made, and they go to one of the 5 or 6 independent laboratories across North America that do the testing. And I can tell you that the recycled fiber will never be as strong as the virgin. It can't be. We're shortening the staple, but it's slightly less strong than virgin fiber. And when it comes to certification for flash fired electrical arc flash, we're superior than virgin product in the marketplace. And that's a function of our recycle process. And all of that is education, right? The manufacturer is not going to wire into that, but the end user, you get the safety techs at the oil and gas guys, for example, or hydroelectric guys, they will zero in on the performance characteristics of any product that we bring to the marketplace. And having that third-party independent certification is gold for us, for sure.
Okay, I'd like to just move on to another topic, and that is the actual design of the product in the first place, designed for recycling. I always find it quite useful if people have examples of how this is being put into place, and I'd just like to open it up to talk about what it sounds like. Let's start over here. If I can put you on the spot. You made very clear to us that a carpet is difficult to break down in its traditional form.
Yeah.
So what can be done?
There's a number of issues and obstacles and stuff that you need to overcome. First and foremost, as we've just talked about, it's quite difficult to get hold of enough recycled content fibre out there to be able to make these products in the first place. So it starts off there with raw material supply, which is, you know, we've just had that conversation for the past 10, 15 minutes. The other thing is, and with the carpet sector, there's a number of companies. For example, there's one company that's got 100% wool carpet, 100% wool carpet. When you go to your average store and you buy wool carpet, it's 80-20. So it's 80% wool and 20% nylon synthetics. And there's various reasons for that. So these guys are making 100% wool carpet from the fibre all the way, it's a heat melt process. You don't need any glues, you don't need anything. It's quite revolutionary. The problem is, there's no end market to take it back. So what do you design first? Do you design the product first, or do you have the end solution first? So in the UK alone, you know, that's the dilemma that a lot of these companies are facing. But what they're saying is that, well, if we put it on the product on the market now, we don't want to see it as a waste stream for 10 years, 15 years, in which time technology will catch up with it. So there's a number of issues here, but there is things that are happening. Event carpets, for example, very thin, single polymer, don't need any glues, don't need anything. Perfect example, you know, of how you can turn it back into a polymer. And it's starting to happen, but it's slow. But design for recycling is certainly the way forward.
I mean, Jen, what do you see your technology can break these products down? But where are the bigger challenges for your technology where product design might help to make it a little bit easier for you?
There are different ones for each of these industries that we're talking about, different challenges. Ultimately, traceability across every sector. It's got to the point where you've invented something that, you know, in a really low carbon way separates all these polymers without interacting with, you know, fibres and damaging fibres. And well, that's only great if actually it doesn't cost more to do that than it would to create a virgin. We believe we can do that a lot cheaper, but what we need is to understand when, you know, a roll of carpet comes in, scan it, what is it? At the moment, we have to put a bit of, run it, we're not the recycler, and I realise it would be done at scale in a much more cost efficient way than we do it, but in developing the technology, we put things off, put it on FTI, figure out what it was made of, scale it up, realise which process parameters we need to deal with nylon mixed with polypropylene mixed with latex mixed with PET, deal with all of those polymers all at once. If you could scan it, feed it in, scan it, feed it in, scan it, feed it in. Same with carbon fibre and glass fibre and aramid that would look like bags. It's not about the fibre, and they don't like me saying this, the big fibre companies, but I've said to them, it's not your fibre that's non-recyclable. Fibre is completely recyclable and reusable. So really high grade. It's the resins that you agree to have it mixed in with. And the resin companies quite rightly have their own competitive advantage. They're in business for a reason. You know, every time they tweak a recipe, it makes it slightly less recyclable or more recyclable, and we don't know until we've got it 3 years down the line. It's all about traceability. If recyclers know what something is as it comes across their desk, they can deal with it in a heartbeat. Same with garments. We were exactly the same with the fast fashion project that we worked on. You know, a dress came in 100% polyester, and straight away we were like, what about the metal there? What about this? What about the elastic? Is there an elastic waist? It's clearly not. And it was us telling the brand that their supplier wasn't giving them what they thought they were giving them. They weren't buying what they thought they were buying. You know, the rolls of fabric was called, you know, one thing, and the actual FTIR was showing us another thing. Again, traceability, because nobody gained anything from flying on that label. Nobody. If you could just be honest, and the label was truly, you know, scan it and we know exactly what it is. There is a company, I think it's Patagonia actually, who have taken the first step to QR code here on all the stuff. And I know the recycling technology behind that means that when you're ready to get rid of that code, you send it back for free. But the clever bit is that they scan that QR code, and that was our tech. It would be scanned as it entered DCOM, which is our technology, and nobody used to touch it. At the moment, we've got, oh, it's cold. We'll have to chop an arm off, and then insides are meshed up, and then there's an elastic bit, and then nobody knows where to start with recycling that stuff. And it's like Ross was talking about earlier with different types of waste. If it's not labelled, it makes the sorting and the segregation and the treatment of it really labour intensive. Hence why it's 300 quid a tonne to have it done.
Yeah. But there are solutions coming down the tracks where, and it's because the brands and the consumers want to know the provenance of a product and not be reliant upon the label. where they are implementing tracing into the actual fibres. And it seems to me that that is being driven from downstream, that kind of innovation could help enormously if you were able just to simply put it through a scanner and it would tell you exactly what that is, not be reliant on a QR code or other things. But it seems to me that it's all about product design. The example you gave with the
In Europe, there's a organisation similar to ourselves called ECRO. They are developing something called a product passport. And the problem they have is they've got to get manufacturers buy-in. Now, each manufacturer has 100 odd different ranges. Every season, a new range comes out, and it's even worse in fast fashion. You know, and it's ridiculous the amount of colours, styles, prints. It's just colossal. Each one of those products has got to be fed into a database. So when a recycler receives it, they can scan it and it means something to them. When a take-back person receives it, they scan it, can mean something to them. Each one of the people along the kind of end-of-life line, if you like, has got to be able to scan it and pick up the information that they require. That is a huge task.
That's coming through as part of the green deal, isn't it?
Correct.
That's part of the textile strategy.
So
It's all going to have to be done.
no, so it's absolutely. So going forward, you've got a chance, but you've got millions of ranges previously that you've got to try and kind of code and identify, because that's your waste stream today. That's your waste stream over the next 5 years, 10 years.
Can I just chip in on this one? So if you go to Uniqlo or I think Decathlon now, you'll find that you throw your clothes into a tub and it automatically tells you what they are. That's because they've got RFID tags on them. It's been used in the hospitality industry for years to track, clothing that's out on hire. What a lot of the fast fashion retailers are realizing, it can also help with their takebacks. I just don't know if you know, 20% of clothes are returned in store and about 30% that are bought online. This is a massive cost to retailers because everyone buys 5 things, tries them on, knowing full well they're going to send one back. So you're getting this data passport that's coming through, and we're sort of working on systems now so we can draw that data in, and it helps us know exactly what it is, what it needs to be recycled, where it's come from. And I think as you sort of let us sort of, the problem is you need that supply chain transparency, because what you often find is a supplier say it's 70% cotton, 30% polyester. When you actually scan it and look at the material content, it's more like 60% because nobody checks it, nobody needs to. A customer's not going to know if it's 100% cotton, 70% or 60% cotton. But these systems are coming into place, and I think that's probably going to push it quicker than EPR. Going back earlier to EPR, the French system, I don't think it's a perfect system, but at least it's a system. I don't know if anyone is on the call on this from RAP. RAP have said, we're 3 to 5 years away from having a UK EPR, and that's with a fair wind behind. I think you're probably going to find the brands get on and do this themselves because they would rather lead it than have legislation that can sometimes be a little bit haphazard.
I believe we do have some people on this call from RAP. Is anyone willing to step forward and answer that question? Can we do that technically, Rebecca?
Yeah, they should be able to unmute themselves.
You can
If
unmute
they-
yourself if you're from RAP.
Maybe
Otherwise-
not.
Okay,
They'll watch the recording and go,
maybe they're watching the recording. Okay, we're getting towards our deadline here, so perhaps what we'll do is we'll just go around.
Hi, sorry. I'm Sarah Robbins from RAP. Sorry, a bit late to go on the screen there. Hi. I'm fairly new to RAP, so I'll agree with Ross that we are 3 to 5 years away. But yeah, I know it's a lot longer than we ideally want it to be, and I agree with what Ross said. I think the brands and retailers are going to take this ahead probably quicker than the legislation will definitely come in. So just to agree with him, really.
Okay, thank you for stepping in.
That's okay.
Thank you for agreeing with the panel.
Nice to meet you all.
That's excellent to hear. Thank you.
Thanks.
Have we got any more questions from the audience?
You know what, you've done a great job in covering off all
Have
of the
we?
questions that come
Okay.
in.
Good.
We've had questions about passports, about traceability. I feel that most of it has been covered. Where is that one? Dave's doing a good job of
Question about
answering
what's better,
questions.
chemical or mechanical recycling? Is there any benefits?
Okay. Anyone want to?
Can I just say that I mean, recycling generally, if you're doing it, is good. I mean, I don't think we're at a stage of maturity in recycling in general to start setting one against the other. I think what we've got to do is try and get the mindset that things can be reused, can be recycled, whether it's mechanical, chemical, pressure driven, pyrolysis. Doesn't really matter. We've got to get over that first hump and get people doing it at all. So leave the competition until 10 years down the line when we've got one starts to work better than the other, but not.
Give them all a go.
Yeah.
Do we all agree with that? Are we happy with
You
that?
don't have
No, I think in general, I do. I think the only thing I'd add to that is, let's not recycle for recycling's sake. If the carbon footprint to recycle an item is larger than it will ever be able to flow back, let's question, do we actually recycle it? Do we even manufacture it in the first place if we know that to recycle it's going to cost the earth when we're all literally trying to do it?
Yeah. Okay, so
Sorry, Mark, we've got a hand up. Do you, someone got their hand up? Do you want to ask a question? You unmute yourselves.
Stylish.
Sorry.
Hello, gentlemen and lady. It was a very interesting talk. A few bullet points. One is that the recycled textile can also be used in non-textile application, like the PP or mask waste or any other kind of waste which can't be spun. I think it can be used in pavement, tiles, etc. That's number one. Number two is that the natural fiber waste, which can't be spun, it can be converted into non-wovens and say can be used in agriculture because it will be biodegradable and it won't affect the ecosystem adversely. Third is about the high value and high performance fibers like aramid, like carbon, etc., which we can't just throw away, but they can be used in applications which are less critical. For example, there could be high performance fibers, but the waste can be used in reinforced concrete, etc. So just some bullet points. Thank you. If the panelists to comment, I would love to hear from them.
thank you very much, and for battling through that technical interruption there. We've got a couple of minutes before we hand over to the University of Huddersfield. So I think what I'd like to do is just go round the panel, starting virtually, and just ask you for the one thing that you think could help the industry to accelerate its progress on recycling. So Ross, if I may start with you. Are you there, Ross?
Yeah, sorry, what was the question? I was just typing away in the chat room, so.
No, I'm just looking for the one thing that you believe would help to accelerate progress in recycling of textiles.
I think there's recently been an Innovate UK grant, and I'm sitting with a consortium of 25 other companies, and I just think collaborations between everyone, and it's really interesting sitting here because I obviously come more from a retail fashion sector, and you guys are having the same problem in carpets, you're having the same problem in sort of more technical things, and there's a lot that you guys are doing that we don't know anything about, and I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that we're doing that you don't know anything about. So I think cross-sector collaboration is the key.
Collaboration. Thank you. Dave?
Yeah, that's a good point, Ross. I also think government direction here, as far as the technical aramid fibers go, governments are a big user of this product. If they were to turn around and put as much emphasis on recycling their own aramids, as much as they ask us not to throw plastic straws in the garbage, and that filters out to industry, then I think they've got a willing audience right there. A lot of their programming is public tender. Build in extra points for recycling into the public tender process, and have that option available. Everything that we do, for example, is open to every manufacturer. So from the top down, tell people to recycle, give them some incentive to do so.
Thank you. Mark?
I guess a methodology for achieving a standard for a recycled product. At the moment, every customer we go to does their own testing because there isn't a standard that we can fall back on. I've spent 30 years in the water industry. There's scientists there. There was a standard. If you go to the standard, it's got the kite mark on it, you can use it. If we have something similar for recycled materials, then the adoption of that material into the manufacturing would be so much quicker. Yeah, it would happen once rather than 100 once.
It's a difficult one because I think there's plenty for us. But today, where I am today, if there's one thing that I could touch and I could implement that would make a big difference, would be a take back scheme.
Okay, thank you. We're up against it with time, so thank you again for being so to the point. Adrian?
I'd just like to throw something in from that field. I was at the Textile show in Frankfurt, which is not where you expect a lot of innovation. And there's a Swiss company called Oceans, who developed product ranges based on a new polymer that the entire supply chain is C2C Gold certified for the biological cycle. Now that's a synthetic fiber that is C2C Gold across its entire supply chain. It's dropping into existing polymer supply chain right from. It really blew my mind. I didn't expect to see it there, but I think it is going to make a big difference. It's got a hell of a lot to tell.
Thank you. And Jen, finally.
Oh, the best ones have gone because I'm last. I actually would have said something very similar to Mark, but since that's already been made, I would probably say if we can stop using the word waste, full stop, and start talking about materials, then we're halfway there.
Lovely. Thank you. And thank you all very much indeed. Incredibly insightful session, which I'll wrap up after we've heard from the University of Huddersfield. So I believe that we have Sahel Rana, who's Senior Lecturer in Technical Textiles at the University of Huddersfield, who will be hosting the Textile Institute World Conference in the summer. Is it July or June?
July.
July. Thank you. Sahel, are you there?
Hi, hello, hi everyone.
Hi. Very well.
Hi, how are you all?
The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you so much. So yeah, thanks for giving me some chance to talk about our conference. So we're highly privileged to organize the Textile Institute World Conference 2023 at the University of Huddersfield. Probably you already know the theme is sustainability of the textile and fashion supply chain, transitioning to zero carbon and zero waste. So it's needless to say that this is one of the most important topics we're discussing nowadays, and probably today also in this particular event there have been a lot of useful discussions about waste, zero waste, and regarding that, and recycling, of course. So as you it is clear from the theme that it's quite wide. We're focusing on a very wide theme, the whole textile and fashion supply chain. So we'll invite topics starting from from fiber, and even before that, starting from polymer polymer, and then fiber, and then manufacturing of textile, garments, and not only technology, but also the topics related to, marketing, business policies, and social aspects. And of course, there will be, where welcoming topics about recycling, environmental impacts, anything related to, zero carbon and zero waste. So we have a few specific themes in this conference. For example, advanced fashion, composite materials, green skills, nonwovens, dyes, pigments, and polymer, advanced technical textiles. But these are some of the sub themes. But there will be, other topics and other themes depending on the, submission we get. And one new thing we are doing this in Textile Institute conference is that we are putting a lot of emphasis on the participations from the industry. So we really want this event to be a meeting point for, both academia and industry, as well as people from other areas like from policies or working in social areas. So that's why in this conference, where we have many options for the academicians, we have options for submitting an abstract and then an academic paper, a purely scientific and technical paper, and then a presentation. Whereas for the industry people, where the academic paper is not mandatory, so they can just submit an abstract like a small paragraph telling their ideas, what activities they are taking in this particular theme, and then they can present. So the academic paper is not mandatory, right? So we're welcoming any ideas, new ideas, or any practice what the industries are undertaking currently to this to address zero waste and zero and recycling and zero carbon, right? So yeah, and I think that's all. That already we're getting, there are a lot of interest from people all over the world. There have been a lot of submissions. Although the deadline was over on 31st January, but still we are getting submissions. So it will be still open for a few days. So please submit, your ideas, abstracts, and if you have any questions, get back to us. And another important thing about this conference is that we have the technical program, of course, there's papers, presentations, and all that. Apart from that, there will be poster sessions also. So who does not want to submit, present or present a paper or submit a paper, they can always present a poster. Also, there will be social events, a number of social events. There will be exhibitions by the students from our, fashion and costume team from the University of Huddersfield. So there will be a lot of other events. So I think this will be a big event on textiles, and there will be people from all over the world from different disciplines, and I'm sure there will be a lot of useful discussions on this very important theme. So from the University of Huddersfield, from the conference chair, Professor Parik Goswami, and the whole organization team, we cordially invite you to participate in this big event. And we look forward to meeting you in July. So that's all. Thank you. And I would like to request Stephanie from Textile Institute if she wants to add anything, if I have missed.
Oh my gosh, no, I think that's an absolutely perfect introduction and just everything that you said. And then really, I suppose the call is for industry to come forward to share their solutions, emerging sustainable technologies and practices, just so that we can discuss in full, everybody together, with a full move to, zero carbon, zero waste. I think you mentioned the day, so it's the 3rd to the 6th of July, and we're delighted and proud as well that this is our 92nd World Conference, and we're also pleased, obviously, it's with a corporate member, the University of Huddersfield. We still have a number of sponsorship packages available. We have, I suppose, thanks to the founding sponsor, Chimera, they invested in this journey many months ago now to get the conference up and running, and our gold sponsors and partners, Taylor and Francis, BTMA, A. Hainsworth, and our media partners as well, that are doing a great push for the conference. So, yeah, I really don't think you've absolutely covered everything, so I don't think there's much more to say apart from we look forward to seeing you in Huddersfield, and please, whether you're from industry or academia, please, submit, and we do hope to see you there. So thank you. And registration's open already.
Good job, Stephanie, and thank you very much. Some good call to actions there to get your papers in quickly, because there's only a few days left. Get your money out for sponsorship, please. Corporates out there. And go and buy your tickets. I think that is the three things that you came across very loud and clear. And I look forward to seeing everyone who does attend there in July. Am I right in saying it's the first in-person conference since COVID?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. We can't wait.
No. And I'm sure our audience today would agree with that. So we are bang on 5 o'clock UK time. So very quickly, I think what we should take away from today is that there is a need in particular for collaboration between our industry, which is very well represented by our panelists and you, our audience, but with those application sectors that we need to bring on board to accelerate the recycling process. So in technical textiles, whether that is automotive has been mentioned, aerospace has been mentioned, construction has been mentioned, and there are many others. This seems to me to present an enormous opportunity, particularly when we're going to run out of virgin carbon fibre in about 5 years' time. I should be looking at companies who are looking to resolve that particular issue. But thank you for this particular session. I hope you've enjoyed it. It will be available online in the next day or two, but you'll be made aware and we'll send out an email to you to let you know that. So thank you, panelists. Thank you, Textile Institute, University of Huddersfield, and thank you all of our delegates. We'll see you again soon.